Okay, hello everybody, welcome to the salon. This evening at the salon we have art and activism, and today we have special guests Kapari and David. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I'll just tell you a little bit about the salon for those of you that don't already know. The salon is an online consortium, I guess, in a way, for artists to come together and showcase their works and share and exchange ideas. We've been running since the beginning of March, and we come to an end at the end of May. My name is LaToyah Gill. I am the organizer of the salon and founder of Untamed Artists, which the salon kind of comes under. So today, yes, we're talking about art and activism because they're both subjects that I'm very much interested in. I come from an artistic background and I've always kind of been social, politically inclined to the sense of being an activist, but haven't necessarily, up until maybe a couple of years ago, actually called myself an activist. So we're just having a conversation with everyday people just to show how art and activism combined can be practiced amongst everyday people. So I'm just going to ask you guys to kind of introduce yourself, whoever wants to go first.
I'm an artist in the sense that I'm an actor, which is an art. I think I've always been an activist in that I've always wanted change in the family, in society, in the system. So I'm a radical by nature. I am using a lot of forum theatre, which is theatre, taking theatre to the people in order to provoke change and how people can explore the system from a different perspective. That's what forum's about. And that is how I am a radical, if I was to say I am, or an activist. But it's all new for me and very interesting. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you. All right.
Hi. About including the right voices as well and fight, and just not social justice, but environmental problems as well. Before maybe this year or last year, I wouldn't necessarily consider what felt good, and slowly but surely I'm starting to embody it because it can be intimidating to claim to be something as impressive and as great as that. So hopefully in the next few months or a year, I can bravely and confidently claim that. But for now, we're working towards it.
Great, thanks guys, welcome. I'm glad to have you here. I'm just going to start off by saying art, activism. Why do you think the two together can be a value or used as a tool for social change? Or why do you think what do you think the importance of those two combined is?
Well, for me, art is expression, basically. But as human beings, we're always evolving. So therefore, an art should be an expression of that evolution. And evolution means change. So with all the theatre that I'm interested in, it's making a change or saying something that people need to hear in that sense. So it's expression and change put together. That's my perspective for now anyway, if that makes any sense.
I think, okay, so I usually bring these two together in the sense that art is often used to start conversation. Art is a great conversation point, and often activism or the word activist can push people onto their back foot in terms of exploring ideas because they might not feel adequate or well equipped, or even sometimes attacked when that conversation comes up. And art is such a great conversation starter. And in a way, using that to start conversations that are often difficult to have can be such a great combination that when they come together, they make beautiful, beautiful ideas come to the forefront.
Mm.
And to me, that's how I've always seen it. And that's how I've always looked at it, coming from a slightly artistic background as well. It's just like, oh, what can I do to make sure people are having conversations that needed to be had, and make sure people are involved in the community, in the society, and on a global scale, making changes that are better for not just communities in local places, but the overall health of the world, if that makes sense. So it's, for me, it's far deeper than just starting the conversation. It's hopefully using that conversation to make moves and start action.
It is a slow process though, isn't it?
Yeah, very, very slow, very slow.
I think for me, certainly the two, art and activism, is, and I come from a very artistic point of view of this. I feel like in a way, if you're being authentic as an artist, then you're naturally going to be receptive of what's around you and going to express that authentically. And if you are situated in an environment that is politically charged or is dealing with social issues that are like so you can't escape, and there's just issues that are out there that everyone's talking about, that's on the collective consciousness, you're naturally going to receive that information and put that into your art, whether you know, it's the tone of voice, which is kind of more angrier, or the brush of stroke, which has kind of a sad droop to it. I think as an artist, being receptive, being sensitive to the world, I'm naturally going to document what's going on. And I think artists, in a sense, if you're being authentic and not just creating purely for entertainment, you are naturally going to be an activist. And that could be intentional or not intentional.
So it's almost like you're saying it's synonymous.
Not necessarily. I think sometimes there are artists that actively go out to make a piece of work that is politically charged, or they want to make a statement. But I also feel like there's artists that are just, you know, living in a particular time, and they're receiving images, sounds, news broadcasts are coming through. So you're just in the midst of this kind of politically charged environment. And if you're being honest, you're going to react to that. So you're going to react to that with lyrics. You're going to react to that with a brushstroke or what you're photographing. Even if your intention isn't to make a statement about what's going on, you're naturally going to react to that. And I feel like artists in that sense are still activists, even if they don't intend to be, in a sense that what their work that they're creating could affect change by those that see it and react to it and link it to the society that they are documenting. And that's how I see art and activism can work in that scale as well. It doesn't have to be so overt. Yeah. So I know, like, definitely for me, or just, you know, seeing society and seeing how people react to certain words and certain people's ways of life, the word activism can sometimes be approached with problematic attitudes. What do you feel about that? Like the word being an activist and the connotations that come with that. Do you feel that might be off-putting to some people, some creators?
Yeah, I do. As I said, like, the terminology is new, and I wouldn't go as far to say that I've imbibed that concept. And they are, I mean, people who don't really know what it is, I think have more of that attitude. But I mean, I like what you said before, LaToyah, in that activism is basically a response to what's around you. And in that sense, it's activism because you're responding to your environment. So that's going to create change if you're doing it intentionally or not. I would like to use activism from that perspective. That suits me. But I don't know, Kapari, what do you think? How does that relate?
I feel very complex feelings when it comes to the word activist, because like I said in the beginning, it's not something I still am not in a rush to claim, right? And here in my mind, I would like to live in a world where activist is somewhat more obsolete. It's not something that we're striving to have because it means there is something to shake up. But then that's just me being a wishful thinker, right? Wanting things to be better for the world so that we're not constantly having to be activists to advocate for something just for the rights to be, let's say, having a peaceful life, for example, right? That's just an example. But yeah, I feel very strongly about that word, and I think there's some significant importance to it. I think it's relevant. We need that lingo, but at the same time, too, sometimes it's different when it's turned on to you. It's hard to claim it sometimes when you feel like maybe it's not enough, and sometimes maybe you made change in the community by affecting policy change. Have you made change in your community by making sure you're putting programs out there that actually makes a difference? So that can be one of those things that may be intimidating, but I think the language is relevant for us to use or utilize in a positive way to bring people into the forefront. So it's like a 50-50 with me. Like, yes, we need it, but sometimes too, you have to be careful not to throw it out there and then call everyone an activist, or people who actually are doing activism don't get that term placed on them, if that makes sense. So
yeah, I also feel like sometimes the word activist kind of alludes to a certain type of person, that sometimes people may feel that they are not smart enough or know enough about a certain topic to be an activist. And I feel like sometimes artists may feel like they're out of their league when it comes to like policy or politics. They don't feel like it's their place. And a lot of the time you get like people in politics saying it's not artists' place. But we all live in society, and we all feel the effects of society and policies that are put out there. So I feel like it is very much our place. We don't necessarily need to know about the ins and outs of policy making, but if there is an issue that affects us and triggers us, affects our way of life, or people that we love's way of life, or not necessarily even people that we know's place of life, but just out of, from a human point of view, I don't think we should shy away from the idea of activists necessarily are only people that are intellectual or like thoroughly know about a complex study, a complex subject. I feel like anyone that's a part of this world and feels like there's unjust or inhumane activities going on, I feel like, you know, be an activist or be a person, do it, go out and be that change.
Human emotions do matter as well. So
Yeah.
sometimes having the intellectual aptitude doesn't just mean that you are worthy. So your experience as a human being, well, your as in is valid, whoever is valid and is necessary. So I agree with everything that you put out.
Just go also explore that idea, like in this kind of social media era, and do you feel like sometimes people may be frightened to align themselves with certain topics that they only know a little bit about, and don't necessarily want to just be attached solely to that project, to that issue, if they've just kind of expressed a little, if they've just kind of voiced a little support for it? Do you feel like people shy away because they don't want to be attached completely, their name to be attached completely to a particular subject that they don't know about. Do you think that's another reason why people may be scared? Okay, you guys are frozen. I don't know whether it's going to be recorded, frozen. But...
amount of saturated information out there, obviously the fake news, and sometimes not all causes have the right intention as the agenda. So I personally think people should have a healthy caution before throwing your money, throwing your attention, and throwing your efforts to just a cause, just because it has some sense of social activism in there without doing good research. We've heard one too many stories of how a certain cause takes money from people that is meant to help others and takes it and runs with it. You know what I mean? So I think it's good to exercise that caution, do a little bit of research, just because there's so much information out there. So sometimes it's not even that hard to do just a bit of research to be like, okay, this is something that aligns with me. And it's okay if it doesn't. You might know someone who it aligns with and be like, hey, this means absolutely nothing to me, but I saw this and I know you're passionate about this. So check it out. This happens in my circle. Things that I know my friends aren't relatively interested in, know that I'm interested in, they pass it on to me and I can do something with it. So I think people should definitely exercise that caution, do a bit of research. If you're not sure, pass it on to someone who you know at least will do the research for you. I know that sounds horrible, but at least do that.
Well, it's true. We're just bombarded with loads of information. Sometimes it's something that may look like a good project to align yourself with may turn out not to be, which could be a way, like a barrier as well, to actually doing some social action work. What do you think it is about art that that can be quite powerful and used as a powerful way to in campaigns related to art activism?
I like the whole idea of culture and art and how specific art forms or art in itself is laced with culture. And if there's a lack of understanding in terms of the culture, will you get the full interpretation of the art? I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that's a point, because we can interpret art as we respond to it, because it's an individual response. I mean, because if an artist puts something out there, he might mean something, and my response might be something else, completely different from the artist's intention. But I think there's something there in culture and art and how they express themselves and how they combine, and how they're separate. Just a discussion on culture and art in itself. There's a lot to say about it. That's what attracts me in that sense.
I agree. I think there's a lot to unpack there, but for me, what's the most attractive to me is how artistic activism is relatively peaceful, but can be persuasive, right? Like I said at the beginning, sometimes the conversation just needs to be started, and that's where the persuasion comes in. When the conversation starts, action can follow, but when the conversation hasn't even started, it's often hard to implement any form of action. And I think that answers your question, but yeah, that's what's attractive to me about both of them coming together.
For me, I definitely feel why art is effective in activism is because art has the ability to touch on emotions, and emotions are universal amongst humans. So and art can also be quite universal because it has a language that is universal. I mean, that's not to say lyrics or literature. I mean, in one sense it can be, because it can be translated. But if you're talking about a painting or a piece of classical music or jazz, it's you're kind of you're kind of extracting emotions from people. And I think if you're creating a piece about the atrocities that is going on in some war-stricken country, and you're photographing and you're seeing images, you are going to respond to those images, if you know, because it's a human thing to do. Okay, yes, if you see too many, you may become desensitized to a certain point, but art has the power to reach in to your emotions more so than seeing statistics or you know, just hearing like policies that or jargon that doesn't necessarily speak to you. So I think art is good in that way, is because it touches on people's emotions that are universal. I just wanted to go back to what you were saying, Kapari, about persuasion. And I think like where I think, you know, art is a great, or can be a great tool for social change, there's also some dangers that come with linking art with activism, for example, art and propaganda. And we've seen loads of examples throughout history of how art has been used for propaganda. Like, you know, yeah, what do you guys feel about?
No, I agree. And I think that's why it's so, to me, you've just made the point that I was trying to make, in terms of that's how powerful it is. In the wrong hands, it creates such huge damage in society. And I don't want like it to be seen as a negative thing, because I think with that persuasion comes that power to do good as well as do evil. And I think that there's, with new ideas coming up and new activists and artists connecting, it can lead to
Sometimes art only focuses on a particular culture, and if you're not aware of that culture, it's almost as if you can't read that art, or that art doesn't talk to you. Because some art forms don't talk to me. I don't know why. Well, sometimes it is because of culture, and you can cross those borders also. And in one sense, I understand what LaToyah was saying, crossing those borders because they're totally emotional. But even that can depend on culture as well, because what's hot for me might be sweet for you because of your culture.
Yeah. And I like, again, tapping into emotion is powerful. It's powerful in so many ways. But my main concern with that being the top priority is emotions are as fickle as the wind. You know, you can tap into emotions, but how long can that sustain? How long can that anger sustain? You know, sometimes I worry about that, but I am relatively new to understanding the philosophy behind activism, you know, so tapping into that and learning further as I go would help me understand as well, in when it comes to using the thoughts that go into making emotional art. And I know if I understand what works goes into that, I will be able to know, oh, okay, this is why it's important to tap into emotions. This is why it's important to tap into perspective, or even just tap into culture, like you said. There's a lot to unpack, and I feel like I'm stumbling over my words. I'm thinking so fast. I'm trying to get my thoughts into order, but yeah, pretty much everything you both said was really good.
Yeah, I have to be honest, like you guys, I kind of dropped out and you froze, so I caught the last of that. I'm hoping the recording caught everything.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you guys deviated away from the propaganda aspect of things. But yeah, and it was just to say, like, going back, and you may have already said this, but the human mind is, susceptible to the powers of persuasive imagery. So if you have like a tyrant government, for example, Nazi Germany that just bombarded society with imagery, propaganda imagery, like burnt books, only allows certain artworks to be created. Sometimes you don't necessarily know that the images you are seeing are purely designed to make you think a certain way. And that's where I feel like the danger of propaganda or aligning art with politics can be, if it's not authentic, if there's like a higher forces that are kind of orchestrating imagery that's being pushed out. But yeah, if it's done authentically, then you're getting different voices. You're getting different voices from artists and different perspectives. That's why I think art is also important for now. Art and activism is also important for now. But creating noise and connecting people. But it's also important to document moments in time. Like if you think back to Pablo Picasso's Guernica, like the massive artwork which was made in response to war, or John Lennon's Imagine, that you have these great pieces of these artists making great political works that transcends time. They're important during the day. They're also important for people to reflect on history and see a different perspective of society during that time. That isn't just told through institutions that are obviously pushing a certain agenda. And that's another reason why I think art is a very powerful tool for change, not just for now, but also to document what's going on for the future. So we got like 3 minutes left. I just wanted to ask you if there are any like campaigns or artistic pieces of work throughout history that you remember, and why. Why they've kind of stuck a core. Oh, I can't hear people. Kapari, on mute.
Okay. Oh, I was basically saying David could go.
Okay.
I have a few, but David go.
No, go, because I don't have many. So I think if it's 3 minutes, you should go.
It's not that many, but I was going to touch on like music. For me, a lot of music and a lot of poetry has been like my thing. That's like, wow, this really, like you said, this really touched my emotions, but in a way that it's not like just fleeting. It's more so like something that stuck with me, so I could remember whenever I'm taking the next steps forward. Obviously, some of them are almost weren't groundbreaking, I think, in their time. But now sometimes when you go back and you look at it, you're like, wow, this is groundbreaking. And I'm trying to pull up the list. But I enjoyed, I would just give artists, obviously like the American era of change and civil rights movements. Obviously, even though we're not American, obviously I am like, we're not from that, but their story influences things that happen across the diaspora, because we're all connected in that way. So yeah, I remember listening to Ella Fitzgerald, and her music to me was really good. And it's so hard to even listen to music without like thinking about that music. It's not for me that her songs aren't easy listening anymore, because there's just so much in there that I really enjoy. I enjoy I don't even know if you'd consider her art, but that's the person I'll put to like my list. I have a few, but I feel like she's the one I think of immediately. Even though most people wouldn't consider her like an artistic activist in that sense. I think her way of life kind of embodied some of those things. And David can go, I'm sure.
So who's that?
Ella Fitzgerald.
Ella Fitzgerald.
Yeah.
Just quickly, you said about Ella Fitzgerald, or how you pronounce her name, that she wasn't so much an activist, but in the sense what LaToyah was saying about art and responding to your surroundings, she wasn't she? And a lot of people during the civil rights time, it was, well, the art was in response to their surroundings. But also, just quickly, going back to emotion and how art affects emotion, also it kind of creates a shared experience, doesn't it? And that in itself creates empathy. And that's how I think art's really translated from universally, if that makes any sense. I mean, I'm just connecting art, emotion, and empathy and how they work in line with each other. But I don't have a favorite artist, admittedly. Different things have stimulated me at different times in my life.
Okay, so long, guys.
Oh, okay. I forgot to add this person. He's relatively unknown to the rest of the world, but quite known in like Ghana and West Africa. His name is King Ayusoba, and he sings more so like folksy music, but talks a lot about the nature of man, how we destroy our planet, and just being better human beings. And I know if a Ghanaian is listening to this and they hear that I mentioned his name, they're gonna giggle because he's just like a character, but I love him so much. He's, again, not known in like the wider world, but I listen to a lot of King Ayusoba, and yeah, I just enjoy music that speaks, you know, beyond just the beat. It makes it, you can think about it as you're listening, like, huh, that's what you mean. So I enjoy it.
What about you, LaToyah?
There's so much. There's so much to say, and I definitely want us to come back and talk about it even more in the part 2. Maybe we can go away and come back with, I don't know, 5 pieces of work that have kind of changed the course of or impacted society, artistic pieces that have impacted society. Like just at the top of my head, like some may not even know, like, I don't know, do you know Blackbird by the Beatles? It's actually written about civil rights movement. There's like famous songs that you may not even know that are actually written about, you know, moments in time that you just sing happily, don't really know the meanings to. There's, you know, Nina Simone. You've even got like genres of music that are known for like protest music. Like
one that gets
music,
me was Bob Marley's Buffalo
Soldier.
Sorry.
Yeah, Buffalo Soldier. Like even hip hop music came out of the came from the streets and oppression, talking about life in you know, in society, being oppressed, but being, you know, in that part of New York. Or what you've also got like Wade in the Water, which is a famous slavery song, which some say Harriet Tubman used to direct the slaves where to go in the kind of underground world. So there's different genres of music or types of arts, movements that are kind of politically charged. I feel like there's so much we can explore. I definitely want to come back for a part 2. But for now, yeah, I'm going to end the session unless there's something else anyone wanted to add to that. You're frozen.
Interesting.
Okay, thanks so much, guys. There's a lot to discuss with art and activism. Yeah, just for you guys out there, we are everyday people. You don't need to have 10,000 degrees to be an activist. And remember, being an activist is just a label. You don't have to create works that are going to go out there and affect the whole of the globe. You can do a little mural in your local community that just, you know, uplifts your local community. There's so much that you can do with your art and your expression of it. So signing out. Thank you for joining us for Art and Activism. I'm LaToyah Gill.
I'm
Kapari.
Kapari Elizabeth Bagerbaseh.
And I'm David.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.